In this video, I'm going to show you how to make fabric covered headbands. These are really fun because you can use your favorite cotton fabric prints to match any outfit, and the plastic headband on the inside is much more comfortable when it's covered in fabric, and they have a little knot at the top. So collect your materials and let's get started. Start by cutting out your pattern pieces, or you can use the measurements listed in the blog post. You're going to need a piece of fabric about 2.5 inches wide by 16 inches long. This is going to cover the headband. So it doesn't have to be exactly those measurements, but just find a scrap that'll cover your headband. These tab pieces are 2.75 inches by 1.75 inches. And then your main headband piece is 22 inches by 6 inches. So the first thing we're going to do is press this 6 by 22 inch piece of fabric in half. Press it, and then we're going to stitch the top, the long edge, with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. After you've sewn that strip, take a safety pin and pin it to the folded edge of your strip, and this safety pin will make it easy to pull the tube right side out. So then thread the safety pin into the tube and use it to guide your fabric through. And take your safety pin out, and then we're going to press this tube with the seam allowance centered on one side. So this will be the back edge that we don't see. So press that. Now use that tube to make your knotted piece. So what you're going to do is just make a knot and try to get that knot centered. And then we're going to try to get the seam allowance on the same side. So this is what your piece is going to look like, and that's going to create the knot that goes on top of this headband. You can play with it to get the look you want. So we're going to set that aside for now, and we're going to make these little tab pieces. So the first step on these tab pieces is to press under 1/4 inch on the long edge. Do that for both. Once you've pressed under 1/4 inch, we're going to fold these in half and match the short edges, and then pin, because we're going to sew this open edge in the bottom to create little tab pieces to give the headband a nice finish at the bottom. So do both of those. So we're going to stitch from the top, pivot at the corner, and stitch the bottom, and make sure you back stitch both at the start and the finish. Okay, so I've sewn the side and the bottom edge, and now I'm going to trim off the corner here, all the corners, and trim the seam allowance down to about 1/8 of an inch. And then we're going to turn these right side out, and then we'll have all our pieces ready to assemble the headband. So these are little, so they're kind of hard to turn, but if you have a screwdriver or something, you can stick it in there. I like to use the end of my scissors. And we're just going to want to pull those out and make sure the top edge remains folded over. And I like to use my seam ripper to kind of pull these edges out just a little bit. Okay, so there's one tab. Go ahead and press that. These don't have to be perfect. And set aside, and then do the same for the other. Okay, now we're going to assemble the headband. So the first thing we need to do is pull out our glue gun. Make sure you have that all heated. And some extra glue sticks. We're going to use this unfinished piece of fabric to cover the headband. So we're going to start by covering it from the inside so that we have a nice finish. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue here. And some more glue. And then put the middle of this fabric down. This can get a little bit hot, so be careful. Okay, so once it's kind of centered, you can just work your way out, gluing the fabric to the underside of the headband. And do that on the other side too. Okay, after you have that secured, just let it cool for a second, and then we're going to fold over the edges of the headband, over the plastic, and glue underneath. So we'll do one side, and then when we do the other side, you'll see some of this fabric, you'll have overlap, and you can trim that off. So to do this, I like to just start on the edge, put a little glue, and then flip the fabric carefully, and then smooth it out before it dries. And it doesn't have to be perfect. This side is going to be covered with a knot anyways, so don't worry about perfection here. I'll keep going. Okay, so on this side, at the bottom, since the headband gets narrower, we have extra fabric here, so I'm just going to trim that off. We also have extra at the bottom, and then I'm just going to trim the fabric so we don't have too much bulk before I flip the rest of the fabric over. Okay, so now I'm just going to go ahead and finish this off by flipping the other side of the fabric onto the headband. And you'll have a raw seam right here, but again, we're going to cover that up, so don't worry about it. And the bottom, we're also going to cover with those tabs. So you can put a little glue in there, but don't worry if it looks unfinished. Okay, once your headband's done, I'm just going to get rid of all this little glue stuff. So now we're going to attach the knotted piece to the top all the way around, and then I have my tab pieces here to finish it. So what we're going to do is just make sure you like the knot shape, and then make sure your seams are on the bottom. So we're going to attach that part to the headband. And you want to make sure you've pulled the knot tight enough so that you have enough fabric to cover to get to the bottom. So we're good. So I'm going to start at one side. So we need to pleat this so that it fits. There are a few ways to do this. You can pleat it in half, glue, and do it in half again to make it about a ½ inch at the bottom, and just kind of work with those pleats. Or you can pleat them into each other like this. So you can just play with how you want that fabric to look. I like this look, so I'm going to do that. And you're just going to glue those pleats as you do them. So I'm going to put some glue on this fabric. Be careful because it's hot. So we're going to pleat it in the middle, and then I'm going to take this side over here and this side right here. So you just want it to be about ½ inch wide so that we can glue it glue it right on the bottom here. The short end of the headband. And then we're gonna put glue along that seam on the back to hold the rest of the headband in place. So I'm just gonna put glue and then kind of roll the headband into it. And when you get to the knot, we'll just put more glue to keep that in place, and then just make sure you have the seam on the top of the headband. Here's a little trick to hold your glue on your glue gun, is put a little bead of glue and glue the glue sticks together. So helpful. Okay, so just finish that. And then when we get back to the bottom, we're gonna do our little pleat again. And again, you can play with those pleats, do it however you want. It's just kind of gonna look bunched up anyways, but it's a nice drapey look. And then I ended up with some extra on this side. So once that glue dries, I will trim this fabric at the bottom. Okay, so that's how our headband's gonna look. And then once the glue is dry, I'll show you how to put the tabs on. So I'm just gonna trim this excess fabric off and any little threads you have here. Now's a good time to trim them. Okay, so our last step is just to put these tabs on the ends so that they have a nice finish. So if you need to wrap your fabric around the headband a little bit, go ahead and do that. And then when it's dry, so we're just going to try to open these up a little and shove that end in. So I'm not putting glue in here yet because it is a little tricky to get this tab on. It's just a tight fit, which we want, but it might not give you enough time to finish before the glue starts to dry. So put it on dry, and then once your tab is on, we're just going to shoot the glue inside of it. So if you can get your little nozzle in there, just shoot some little glue dabs in there. We don't want it to come out too much. If it does come out, you can take a pin and just wipe it off carefully so that we don't get a gluey look. And then do the same thing on the inside to hold it in. You don't need a ton of glue, but if you can get it deeper, that's good. Okay, so let that dry and we'll do the other side. These tabs will keep it all together, but also give you a soft headband. I think these plastic headbands can be very uncomfortable, but since they're covered in fabric, it's a lot more comfortable. So do the same thing here, and I like to make sure the seam of my tab is on the same side, so check that. Okay, so once that's in, just shoot some glue in there. And then repeat on the bottom, back, or inside. Okay, and once that's done, just try to get all that glue off, and your headband is finished.